Hello and welcome to another session of Other Two Cents. In this first of a two-part series, we're discussing Christianity and how it influences our choice of career. My guests to discuss the topic are Nana Kwame Asumeni and George Nate. Nana Kwame, how are you doing?
I'm very good in yourself, Gary.
Yeah, not too bad here in London. How is South Africa?
Now, I say it's good. We're in winter, a bit cold here. Today is quite sunny, so we're happy for the weather, and we're looking forward to spring and to summer. I guess you guys are in summer now.
We are indeed in summer here in the UK. George, how are you doing?
Gary, I'm doing well. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad here in the UK, as I said. All good here.
Great. Thanks for having me here too.
You're very welcome. There are certain careers that are pretty clear are incompatible with Christianity. That's pretty clear. You can't, for example, be a porn star and expect to be a strong Christian. That is in the extreme, though, which is fairly obvious. But there are more perfectly respectable careers that are fairly clear, are on the borderline with regards to Christianity. For example, being a criminal lawyer and defending criminals. Is that, for example, still compatible with Christianity? And that's what I'm hoping we can explore in this podcast. So I'll come to you, first of all, Nana Kwame. What are your thoughts generally around the subject?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gary. I'm so happy to be on this platform for the first time. It's an interesting topic for discussion. I believe strongly that your career as a Christian must be in line with your purpose and your will, with purpose and God's will for your life. So I think, generally speaking, it depends when one becomes a Christian. So, for example, if you a Christian very earlier on in your life, and you're making a career choice, I guess you'll be well informed as to the kind of choices you make that will be in line with the purpose in life. But let's say, assuming, for example, you're a criminal lawyer, as you said, and you become a Christian, much later on in your career, it becomes a bit tricky as to whether you pause your career and you change direction completely. So I think it's not a clear-cut topic as you said, but I guess that it also depends on your relationship with God and what God is telling you at that point in time what to do. Because at the end of the day, I believe that as a Christian, your main focus and your main purpose should be to align with God's will for your life. So if it means that being a criminal lawyer or whatever borderline career it is that is not pleasing to God, you may want to consider a change in the hopes of pleasing God totally. So those are my early comments and early views on these.
All right. So I think you've raised a number of very interesting points there, which I will come to in just a second. So George, coming to you, what are your opening views about the topic of discussion, which is career choices against our faith as Christians?
Okay, thank you, Gary. When it comes to topics of Christianity or religion and sometimes politics, I tend to shy away from these topics because of their sensitivity. But in this case, it is not as sensitive as I may think, because this is to do with personal choices. So everybody will have a perspective about this. Now, work for a human being. The world was created by God, and he puts Adam in charge. And he actually told Adam to take charge of the garden, work it, and keep it. We work to put food on the table for ourselves and for our families. So for me, I think that it is not a matter of Christian values or beliefs per se. I would also want to add that it is your conscience that dictates these things. I might like to take up a job, that I'll be selling alcohol. I'm a Christian. My Christian values may not permit me to sell alcohol or to take in alcohol. But here am I selling alcohol just to put food on the table. So here I have my Christian values on one side and I have my conscience on the other. Okay. So now there's a struggle. I need to put food on the table. And that is the only job perhaps I could do. So what do I do? So it is my conscience that comes into play here, not necessarily the Christian values. You mentioned a criminal lawyer. Yes, he or she may be a criminal lawyer. That is what the person has led and specialized in. What is that person's relationship with God? Nana Kwame mentioned it. Your intimate relationship with God should be the first principle. So if you value so much your Christian values, then it means that you would have to make sure that that relationship with God is not broken. So you don't go in for a job like that. But once you go in there, your conscience comes to play. And now there's the struggle. Okay. Let's say a job like IT, information technology. Yes. We may want to look at somebody who is into full-time IT. You commit all your time to IT. You may not have even enough time for yourself or for your family. So in this case, one could say that you have chosen a job that is not in contradiction with your Christian values. But then, what is happening to yourself and to your family? You are actually worshiping your job because you gladly spend hours on end, subjecting yourself to, IT, so much so that you neglect your family. What happens to you? So then, what happened to your Christian values in this case?
Okay.
It's been thrown to the dogs.
Right. So I think that's a very interesting position, which again I will come to after I've gone back to Nana Kwame. So Nana Kwame touched on a few very interesting points, which is you building or discovering Christ, gaining salvation well into your career, right? Let's say, for example, as a criminal lawyer, and what you then do after that point, or how you choose to pivot, yourself and perhaps your inability to even do that, given how far you are in your career. For those Christians who are in those positions, it's worth highlighting to them that, look, it's not all doom and gloom. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to change your career, but you could actually leverage it, given that you are encountering all these potential criminals, or whatever the case may be, because of your career path, that you take that opportunity to minister to them and see whether you can win and convert some souls.
I heard Joe talk about Christian values and conscience. I think they're one and the same, in my opinion. But I'm driven by the notion that your disposition and everything must be to please God. So as you rightfully pointed out, that even if you're in a profession and you discover later that this is not entirely something that glorifies God, you can swing it a bit. You can change directions by ministering to the people and all that. I think that the overarching commission for all Christians is whatever career you find yourself in, and whatever kind of people you meet with, you have to demonstrate to them by your lifestyle that you belong to a kingdom, and in the course of your profession or your career, you should be able to use your Christian values and principles to impress upon them that will leave a mark, or will sort of cause them to want to be like you, or to be part of your religion, if I want to call Christianity a religion. So I think your lifestyle, in whatever industry or area of influence you find yourself, should be to point people towards the kingdom of God, in the way you act, in the way you talk, in the way you conduct business, in your honesty, in your day-to-day activity, how you carry yourself. So that is how I perceive that.
Just to take you up on the points you made, you mentioned conscience versus Christian values, right? You mentioned a job being just a job to perhaps put food on the table, as God had commanded Adam to do. But let me try and challenge that a little bit. So, for example, we all know that greed is a sin. We know gluttony is a sin. So, at what point do you draw the line and say, yes, I'm in business, right? And I'm not necessarily distinguishing the employee from the business owner. And the reason why I say that is I used to work with a guy at the company I still work for here in the UK. And this guy resigned after our company was taken over by BAE Systems. His view was he didn't want to work for a company that built missiles and bombs that are used to kill people and to sustain wars all over the world. So he literally resigned on conscious grounds. So there is all over the world some precedent for taking action to change your choice of career or to do something different, either as an employee or as a business owner. So when you say conscience versus Christian values versus, just doing whatever job you're doing, surely there must be a line where you say, this is pure greed, this is pure evil. Yes, I am not doing anything, but by acquiescing to the business model or to the line of work in my career, surely it cannot be compatible with Christianity. What are your views on that?
Okay, I think that we're trying to draw that imaginary red line where one has to stop and say, this is it. I can't go any further because of the Christian values and my conscience. The guy who resigned at BAE Systems, I'm sure it was based on his conscience. I don't know his religion anyway, whether it was a Christian or whatever. But he resigned based on his what? Conscience.
I can tell you now that the guy is a Christian. Yeah. He was actually Catholic.
He's a Christian.
Yes, he was a Catholic.
Okay. So we can have some Christians still in there at BAE Systems. All right? And BAE Systems are manufacturing missiles, but they are still there. So they have some Christian values, but they don't have conscience. So your conscience will have to kick in for you to say no. At the beginning, you mentioned porn star, or let's say prostitution. Some people are Christians. I know people, I know prostitutes who go to church. They have some great values. They are very generous. They're everything they do. Good people do, but this is their business. They have the Christian values, but the conscience is not there. Just because they have to put food on the table and feed their kids with no father. So we will have to decide based on how strong your relationship is with God and say, God, whatever I do, whatever work I do must glorify your name. If it is not going to glorify your name, it's a no-no. That is what we're talking about. It's a no-no. I worked in the airline industry and I had to give out, I beg your pardon, I had to give out alcohol. I do alcohol anyway, assuming that I did not do alcohol, but I had my Christian values and I had my conscience intact. Then I would say, because I don't do alcohol and the Bible speaks against alcohol, I'm not going to do this job. Now I had my Christian values, my conscience kicked in, I struggled with it and I said, okay, well, I don't do alcohol, but I'll give out alcohol. Just same as selling drugs. Somebody will do drugs, but that person doesn't take in the drugs. I will sell drugs.
Similar to the conversation we had, I think, in our previous episode about Christianity and technology. I think there's a far more tighter couple or coupling between our faith and our mission here on earth. And furthermore, everything else that we do to basically support our mission here on earth. Let's say you work for a research company. Let's say you're asked to create, the COVID-19 virus. Let's say the COVID-20, right? I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, at that point, what do you do? Do you still persist?
Yeah, maybe before I even touch on that, I just want to give an example. When I completed varsity, I was approached by BAT, British American Tobacco, for a job as an engineer. So I went for the interview, and yeah, I mean, you might say that it's your first job, you're open to any opportunity. So I went in there. After the interview, they said, let's tour the factory. So we went to the factory, and I could smell tobacco everywhere. It's like, I mean, the smell was just too much for me. So I had to make a choice that, okay, look, they're going to give me lots of money. And I was also, I mean, my conscience weighed heavily on me that, look, are you preferring the money over your conscience because you know tobacco is not good and all that? And I said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to go ahead with this. Unfortunately, other opportunities came and I took it. So this was not like me making a decision where they gave me an offer and I rejected it outright. So maybe God came to my rescue by bringing me an opportunity. So I hear you, George, and I know that maybe I wasn't put in that tight corner. Yeah. So basically, coming to your example, Gary, I believe that assuming I was approached by my superiors to develop a vaccine which um, is not good and it is going to cause harm to people and all that, um, I believe you need to apply some wisdom. Um, of course, it was sprung on you, or maybe even if you knew it was coming, and you know that this is not the place for you, I guess maybe the best approach would be to start looking elsewhere. I know, like, looking for other opportunities might not come overnight, but the mere intention that, you know what, you don't identify with this, you know you've got a responsibility to provide for your family, and this is a means of providing for your family, and you start looking elsewhere. I believe God also looks at the intention, because of course, if your intention was, you know what, I don't care, I'm going to go ahead and be part of this team and manufacture this vaccine, and it will cause this harm and all that. God knows your heart. So I believe that with that scenario, when you are approached to be part of this team to develop this vaccine, which is going to cause all sort of harm to people, and within you, you know that, look, this is not good, and you start looking elsewhere. Should judgment day come overnight, I'm sure God will look at your motives and your intention, and understand that you are put in a very tight corner, and you couldn't just pack your bags and leave overnight. So I believe that the motives and intention of one is very key in God, you know, judging somebody in this scenario.
Okay, that's an interesting point of view. It raises the wider question of how clear cut sin is, and whether there's any kind of a leeway in terms of justification. Now, I always use this as an example when I have these sorts of conversations, which is, remember, Adam had an excuse. He said, it was the very wife he gave me that brought this to me. And in his mind, in his conscience, he hadn't done anything wrong. This was perfectly fine. The wife you gave me, which was meant to be a very good thing, brought this to me, and therefore I partook of it. So how could it possibly be wrong? So could it be that we human beings are effectively being, if you're marking your own homework, you tend to be more lenient on your mistakes, right? You tend to give half marks when it's supposed to be wrong. This is what generally happens. So my question is, are we being strict enough as Christians in terms of our career choices and our activities in terms of how we put food. Because it's very easy to justify your family being in jeopardy and therefore continuing to do something which you clearly know and believe to be wrong. So are we perhaps being a little bit too lenient, not least on our own selves, and in judgment of others? And I'll come to you, George, on that.
Yeah, thanks. I listened to Nana Kwame, and I've listened to you as well. There are two things we are dealing with here, as far as I see. Nana Kwame was going into a new job right from uni. Okay, he was going to be paid huge sums of money, but he looked at his Christian values and he listened to his conscience and decided against it. Okay, now a university graduate, he was going for a job. All right, he mentioned again that if God comes and says, "Oh, okay, this is it for you. You didn't do well," I would say, okay, I would prefer, George, you did just okay to you did very well, because I wonder if I can do very well in the sight of God. You did your best. You tried. By circumstances, like maybe Adam said, but I'm not Adam anyway. I'm not equating to Adam. Okay. Now, having said that, I think that we have to look at those down the ladder. Look at somebody who has not had so much education, looking for a job. He's been walking the streets of Accra, Kumasi, Koforidua for the past 10 months, no job. He keeps begging to eat, begging to even buy water. Then he gets into a tobacco company and they tell him, "Listen, my brother, we're going to pay you 10,000 Ghana cedis a month." And he says, "No way, because of my conscience, I'm not going to do it." Gary and Anakwame, this is very difficult. Now he's going in there to help manufacture tobacco or cigarettes. His conscience tells him no. But his body, the survival that he needs, depends on what he's going to do. So now the conscience, what do? Do you still keep walking the streets of Accra and Kumasi, Takrady, or whatever it is, and reject this one? It's very, very difficult. I'm trying to look at it realistically. If I have finished uni, I've had my degree, my master's, or whatever it is, and I'm looking for a job, I can leverage my education, to look for a better job. But once I don't have any education, what do? I have to settle for everything and anything. Seriously. This is the reality on the ground.
Right.
Why do people go into prostitution? I would say that I've watched a couple of interviews on TV and they interview prostitutes. What they tell you is, it is not that they want to be in this prostitution, but mistakenly they've had like 2 or 3 kids whom they have to look after. So they have branched into this, which gives them quick money. The alternative is you look for menial jobs in people's homes or on the streets and do it. You can make some money, but then they opted for this. So there you have an option down the ladder.
Okay, so now I need to step in here. I hear what you're saying, but the debate isn't about the human condition of choosing between a rock and a hard place. If that's the baseline, then it's pretty clear cut as far as I am concerned. Irrespective of how hard you think it is, you have to do the right thing. Now, I'll give you an example. It's not necessarily career related, but it's in the same ballpark. Take, the Jews who were gassed, right? They didn't take to arms or anything to fight back because their lives were literally on the line. They maintained the values of their faith and they faced death. Take the Christians in Iraq, Syria, who are being slaughtered in Egypt, right? When the Muslim Brotherhood came into power, they were being slaughtered. They were being lynched like black people are lynched in the States or have been. But these Christians don't see, right, we're going to form a militia and go to war and kill people as well. For me, I think even though it might be ideological, it might be easy to say, and I'm not facing that situation, I know what the right answer is. regardless of how difficult it is, you have to do the right thing. And the right thing means you literally keep walking the streets until you find something. Then that is what you've got to do. And I think we need to be honest enough as Christians to admit that. But yes, it can be difficult.